Well, there's new information on the future of our U.S. troops in Afghanistan. The Obama administration is now willing to extend a December 31st deadline for reaching a deal to keep U.S. troops there past next year. And for some foreign political observers, this is being seen as a concession to Afghan President Hamid Karzai, and it comes after weeks of trying to persuade him to agree to the deal. Let's bring in Jonathan Schanzer, Vice President of Research at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and author of the new book, State of Failure, and retired Major General Bob Scales of the U.S. Army, and our Fox News military analyst. General, I'm going to start with you. I'm guessing President Karzai is not caught up in some sort of holiday fever. Is he delaying this decision on purpose?
Of course he is. This is the last stage in his effort to extort as much out of the United States and NATO as he possibly can. He's going to push this log down the hill just as long as he can because he thinks he's going to get more out of us. And look, this administration is getting sick of it, but both sides understand that all of this is really in the best interest of both countries. The Afghans need us and our money to prevent this country from devolving into civil war, and we need to have a presence in the region, lily pads, if you will, in Afghanistan, small numbers of troops to stand in the way of a regrowth of terrorism in that country. So at the end of the day, it's going to be win-win. But the patience of this administration, quite frankly, Harris, is growing very, very, very thin.
Jonathan Schanzer, I have a question for you, though, about our next move, because I know in April we could see a whole new government there. Karzai could be gone in April. So what do we do? Do we just hold out?
Well, I think we may have to hold out. And by the way, his brother may be coming in, and that could be one of the things that he's trying to do right now, is to extract concessions to make sure that he shores up the power of his family. But look, I think at the end of the day, what I think Karzai understands is that we have one really important thing that we need to maintain inside Afghanistan, and that is to be able to continue to carry out drone strikes. And I think that that's probably where the sticking point is, and I think that's where he's going to try to extract those concessions.
You know, I'm curious about how the rest of the world sees this, though. And I mean, I know the rest of the world is not watching what we do with Obamacare, but we are seeing yet another slide in terms of deadlines with this administration. With the world looking in and they see us moving around deadlines, Jonathan, what are they thinking?
Well, look, I think they realize that this is an administration that is not fully committed to this Afghan war. This is an administration that's somewhat ambivalent about the fact that we were there in the first place, if not downright opposed. And so I think this administration sees this right now as an opportunity to protect itself from its right flank, to make sure that we get as good of a deal as possible. But still, at the same time, I think we're going to find the Karzai government extracting some pretty serious concessions.
Real quickly, and then we'll move on to our second topic here. General Scales, what happens if we let this just go by? There's no decision by the end of the year. Conceivably, could we start seeing a lot of our troops come home in 5 days?
I wouldn't say in 5 days. It takes a while to drag out the equipment for 10 or 12,000 soldiers. But look, there's a razor-thin margin in this administration and among the American people and in Congress for continuing the American presence in Afghanistan. There's no love on the part of anyone in the Western world to stay in that country a minute longer than we have to. So Karzai is really dancing on the edge of a very, very serious problem. He needs to get his act together. He needs to come to some consensus. They need to do this bilateral agreement, or we could wake up sometime in April or May with the American soldiers packing up and leaving.
Yeah, and possibly, as Jonathan said, with his brother taking over, which would give us something interesting to deal with, too. Let's talk South Sudan now. You know, I couldn't believe over the weekend, General, you were on with me, they started shooting at our planes from the ground down there. Some of our guys got hurt. So now we know we have a diplomatic mission going on in South Sudan. We have to get our people out. Jonathan, outside of that, do we have any commitment to get more involved?
Look, it's really hard for me to believe that this administration will wade in much deeper here. I mean, you look at the administration's posture on the Middle East, right? We're getting out of Afghanistan, out of Iraq, punting on this question of involvement in Syria, reaching out to the Iranians so that we try to prevent conflict. The idea that we would go rushing into yet another conflict in that part of the world is hard to believe. That said, we know that there are those within the administration, specifically Susan Rice, who have some skin in the game. It's just, I think that if we did get more involved, I think it would really just demonstrate, some real inconsistencies within the Obama doctrine.
Now, you're talking skin in the game politically, but when you look at our nation, what are our interests there?
Well, there's a small amount of oil, but it's not as if that oil's been flowing, and that's actually one of the areas where apparently some of that conflict has taken place. But we have very little in terms of direct interest.
General Scales, over the weekend, like I said, we saw our pilots and those Ospreys get shot at. Everybody made it out alive, albeit hurt, but they're going to be okay. How much presence will our guys make up of this UN mission buildup? Because they're talking about building up twice as many troops there now that we may be edging into civil war in South Sudan.
Yeah, there's two elements here. One is a fairly small Marine task force of about 150, and then there are special operating forces, a number is classified, who are stationed in Djibouti, and they're standing by to evacuate more citizens or to intervene if the administration thinks it's important. But remember, what's hanging over all of this, Harris, is the ghost of Rwanda and the fact that this state is very much a creation of the Obama administration. There is no interest, real interest, that the United States has in South Sudan other than the emotional investment that this administration has made in creating the state. So if things go south, if it turns into a small-scale Rwanda, I'm firmly convinced over time we're going to find ourselves getting involved more and more in South Sudan.
You know, that's one of the things I saw in the Twitterverse this weekend. The other was Mogadishu and Black Hawk Down. I mean, people may not have a stomach to watch this, but as you say, we may get pulled into it. Real quickly, Jonathan, before I let you both go, do we have to get involved in every conflict where we have a diplomatic mission?
Absolutely, we don't. And I think that right now, I think the American public has made that very clear that that's not in our interest. I think the important thing here is to be consistent about why we get involved and when we get involved. And at this point, I think it's not entirely clear.
Jonathan Schanzer, General Bob Scales of our Fox team here, we appreciate both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Harris.
Thanks.